Over the last few years, the Church of Scotland has influenced decisions made by the Scottish Parliament. In this coming year, what would you like the Church to be saying to Parliament?
I'd like the Church to say to Parliament that our poorest communities need more resources put into them, that we need to be looking for ways in which we give to people in our poorest communities a voice to tell us, what it is that they really need, rather than deciding for ourselves what we think people need. And that would tune in with the work that we've been doing.
The thing that matters most is the widening gap between rich and poor. That sounds easy to say, but when you're at the bottom end of the economic ladder, notwithstanding the cutbacks that we all have to face, the gap is continuing to widen between rich and poor. And I think we have to help individual MSPs to see that, but also that something informs the political decision-making process so that it becomes more of an agenda item than it appears to be at the moment. And the Church and Society Council is in an ideal position to do that, because it represents the Church in Scotland.
There's lots of things we could say, but we've got to think about the important things. The important things is the future of our world and what we're going to do for our children. And think about what's happening in the big world. There's a lot of people out there who are suffering day in, day out, and we need to think about them and think about the broader context of what the world really needs. That's what I think we should do.
People, while they're in a bad situation, either on drugs, alcohol, I'd like to know what they're going to do for people once they come off this. Instead of rewarding the behaviour, reward the better behaviour like you would with a child. I'd like to know what they're going to do about that, because they spend an absolute fortune on the medication, on extra social security money. I'd like to know how they're going to put that money to a better use, because it's not working at the moment. And one more question, because you can use either. As a single parent, I'd really like to go back to work full time, but the problem is out of hours childcare. What are they going to do?
I'd like the Church to be saying two things. One is a general thing, the other is specific. First of all, the general thing is the Church always has to be saying that the gospel of Jesus Christ brings hope, and that hope is something for a nation as well as for individuals. On the more specific thing, I think that both Scotland and the Church of Scotland has an amazing record of caring for those in other countries, whether by their presence or by their giving or by sometimes what they have had to say prophetically to the powers that be. And I hope that Scotland, whether it manages to be independent or whether it continues in its present constitutional state, is able to continue to punch above its weight in caring for and in setting example of care for those in other countries who need our help.
The important issues is care of the earth, because if we don't look after the earth, none of the other issues will matter. And certainly in the little election sheet which you've just asked us to fill in, I put education as second, because I think that that is partly the key to some of the other problems, such as poverty and justice and so on and so forth. My wife has done it totally differently, which just illustrates how difficult the prioritisation of these issues can be. So thank you for the opportunity to express an opinion.
Thank you very much. And what would you like the Church to be saying to the Parliament?
Well, I think the Church is doing pretty well, actually, keeping in touch. I think that's one of the great things about having a Scottish Parliament, is you're actually able to speak to people and feel that you are actually influencing things. And I think justice is a huge issue and relates to everything like the benefit system and to the health service and to the overseas aid. And I think it's something about helping people, and that's maybe education, helping people to look at the wider world and the wider issues, and not just their own little
said in his acceptance speech or whatever it was when he was elected First Minister, that he wanted Scotland to be a place of hospitality and that old custom, traditional custom, and I think I just want the Church to be holding that before the Parliament, saying what does it mean for us as a nation to both welcome others but also to be hospitable to each other, and I want just the Church side to be keeping that before them, and whatever the Parliament's doing, to keep coming back to them about that, to the sort of values and nation that we are.
Well, I think the Church needs to speak out on any kind of moral issues, I suppose. It's a very, very open answer, but I think that wherever people are being abused, being kind of neglected, whenever human rights are not respected, then the Church needs to speak out and make sure that their voices are being heard, because after all we're supposed to be the voice of the voiceless and the voice of people who don't have an opportunity to say these things themselves.
To see them legislating in such a way that there is equality between the top 20% and the bottom 20% in terms of income. I mean, the scandal of the bankers' bonuses is not something that can immediately be dealt with by the Scottish Parliament, but it's something that certainly the Scottish Parliament can influence the Westminster Parliament as well.
Yes.
And I think this issue of justice in relation to incomes is one of the things that would most help us to have a wholesome and happy and healthy.
I think the Church can say to the Parliament that we'd like to work together with them in a number of projects. I know there's a plan to move health and social care together, and I think the Church is already working in those areas in many, many practical ways. And I think by working together with the Church of Scotland and other churches, we can actually help many people in society, from children's work to old folks' work, to caring for people with drug or mental health problems. And I think rather than doing lots of different things in separate areas, we can actually pool the resources and actually really work together for the good of people.
One of the really important things we need to bring through is about the way that Christian heritage has shaped our culture in many of the values and so on, but a lot of that's been eroded over the last years. And I think if we were educated about the good things, amazing stuff that actually happened in our history that came through the church, people would get a look at those values and begin to appreciate a lot of the things that have happened. And I think that would be a tremendous influence. For example, Homecoming Scotland was something I remember Alex Salmon said, what's the church doing about it? And the church should have been really in there, getting involved in that. I think, for example, in the national curriculum, there's opportunities for the Christian heritage to go through, to educate children and see about some of the amazing things that have happened. Things have been impacted through medical things over the years, social conditions, and so many other things. So I think the Church of Scotland, we have a tremendous voice to bring out some of that heritage to challenge Parliament, which in turn would then bring good benefits to our society.
It's probably a range of things, but I think possibly, given the economic circumstances, the services that really underpin the very lowest end of our society are the things that are going to be really squeezed, and I think we should be giving them a voice, particularly when the Parliament has been elected, the politics are out of the way. I think it's for us to be pressing the case of those who maybe don't have so much influence, and I would hope we'll be doing that in the months that lie ahead.
To be speaking up for all people with disabilities. At the present time in the UK, people with disabilities have many difficulties. Difficulties with their finances, with their housing, with their employment, with their education, and it's important that the Church speaks up for the vulnerable citizens of Scotland, because they are under a great deal of pressure and they are in danger of being forgotten. And I'm concerned that the Church needs to speak up for the vulnerable citizens of Scotland, people with disabilities who need to be represented, so that all their needs, whether their housing needs, their social needs, their employment needs, their education needs are all being considered and increased, not decreased. They are citizens like everybody else. They should have equality, the same rights and the same place in society as everybody else. We are all equal, so their needs should be met and should not be overridden or forgotten about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That was excellent.
Well, I think the Church has a voice in reminding the Parliament that they need to remember the most vulnerable people in society. And I know that we've got a lot of challenges and a time of austerity and cuts, but what really concerns me is that the most vulnerable ones are the people who are going to suffer most. And I think Parliament has to be aware. And particularly I think of people who are living with HIV. You know, there's still a lot of stigma and discrimination around, and one of the things I'd like to see the Parliament do is make sure that there is a just law, you know, and that people who are living with HIV get the services that they need and are not discriminated against.
Thank you very much.